Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are going to be working on this. Now this is a Ethiopian water opal. Typically you keep it in water, so here it's in a little glass dome. This one's not a particularly bright specimen, and because of that I'm actually going to experiment on this one pretty hardcore, and we may end up destroying it, but we'll see what happens. So you can see here, if I roll it around, this is still in rough form. It's just had a bit of the dirt removed, but it's still got a lot of the dirt in it. It's got a big inclusion of dirt coming in the side here. All of that we're going to have to remove, so that'll be done with the sintered diamond burrs. And then after that, we're just going to polish it up all the way through to a 50,000 Nova point. And even though these are meant to be kept wet, even after you've finished them, chuck them back in a dome of water. Being the mad scientist that I am, I'm actually going to try to dry this as slowly as humanly possible to see how it behaves, just because it doesn't have a lot of color. I mean, I can show you the difference. So this one has a little bit of red, a little bit of green, a slight flash of blue, which is a color I never really see in Ethiopian opal, as opposed to something like this. This one is much more vibrant, much more colorful. This is also rough. This hasn't been carved at all yet, so you can see all the inclusions still in it. But yeah, this one is a much brighter, nicer example. So that one I'm not going to treat so badly, but this one we can really do whatever we want to it. And if it shatters into 1,000 bits, it shatters into 1,000 bits. That's still learning. I just really want to give it a crack, because I've heard rumors online that some people have managed to get it dried. And Michael, who sent these over, he's also experimenting with it at the moment. So I thought, why not? I'll jump on board and try it out as well. Because this one doesn't have a hell of a lot of color, though it is quite nice. And I'm sure once I carve it up, I'll be very sad to see it shatter if I dry it. But you know what? It's worth a try. So let me get the sintered diamond, and we will probably... This stuff carves pretty fast and easy. I'm not going to have to go too high. I probably will just simply start out with one of the 600 grits and see how we go from there. Just get rid of all of this dirt. Doesn't look like it's thick enough to pick off. I typically like to use something like my little pointer stick here and just pick off most of the dirt, but in this case it's not that thick. We'll just burn through it. Hopefully it doesn't smell too bad. And then yeah, Nova points. Nova points. We're not going to do anything but Nova points on this one. See how the 50,000 gets a decent shine. Otherwise we can use a polishing powder or a diamond or anything like that. So let's spin up the Dremel. And we are off. Whipping out the 600 grit sintered diamond. You really don't need more than this, because this stuff goes away real quick. It's really soft, and look at the color of it. It's green. It's a really unpleasant looking color. Bit of a camo green, but like I said, it's very muddy. Much like ironstone and boulder, it just simply disappears. It just turns into a mush. So just keep washing it off. I didn't see that any was getting trapped in the stone at all, so that's not a huge problem. Doesn't seem that porous. And yeah, just burning through it. We'll skip through a lot of it because it does take a bit of time, and it just doesn't reveal that much because you're not looking at a color bar in this case. And then here we go, we're just removing the last few little inclusions. It's interesting, I find that Wello opal, the Ethiopian opal, doesn't tend to have inclusions that run overly deep. They're nowhere near as complex as the Australian ones. It must have something to do with the formation type. But it is typically much easier to remove them. Cracks, on the other hand, are another story, but in terms of mud inclusion, the crust does seem to be less of an issue when it comes to Ethiopian. And then there you go, we've got all of the imperfections gone, so I'm just having a look at the colour. Not a lot there, so it didn't reveal too much. In fact, if anything, it makes it a bit duller because that mud was giving it a nice dark backing. So now we're just looking at it and we're just going to shape it. I'm not going to focus too much on shaping it because this could be completely destroyed by the end of what I do to it. But we are going to make sure we keep our novas safe, so around the edges, no sharp edges, and shape it just a little bit, but not too much. I'm only really shaping it to make my job with the nova points easier. If it's overly undulating or there's tight to reach places, like the one that I'm getting rid of just here, it's just going to extend the process a lot, and I didn't want to have too complex a carving, so I'm just basically rounding it all out, and it turns out to end up being a bit of a skull kind of shape. And then we've got the novas, so 280, 600, 1200, and the 3000. So this combo, I'm showing these, I do go further, but I'm showing these just because I thought at the end of the 3000 I could do a nice quick little sneaky check, just dry the stone a little bit and check it, so you'll see what it looks like. I was a little bit worried, so I'm just wiping it dry and then dumping it back into the water again, just so that I don't cause any kind of cracks. Because otherwise, you're going through all of these grits, and with an Aussie Opal, I'm used to being able to check between every single grit. You can have it dry at any stage in the process. All good, no worries. But for this one, we're a little bit cautious of that, because if it dries out like that and too rapidly, they do tend to craze, crack, split apart, just completely self-destruct on themselves. So we're just going through these 4. And the problem is, at the end of the 3000, you check the stone, and I've got no idea if I did the 280 well enough, let alone the rest. So here we go, just having a quick check with a tissue, just drying it off. And just making sure that it's a little bit streaky, a little bit foggy, but no major scratches or chips or anything like that. And really that's the best I can do. So I'm just looking here for a semi-decent pre-polish, noticing a spot there that I need to hit again. And then just checking the bottom. The bottom's tough because it's got that little cutout in the bottom edge there. Looks a bit like a, I don't know, caramel flavoured egg. But then chuck that back in the water and we spin up the Dremel again. So 8,000, 14,000 and the 50,000. I wish they would change the colour of either the 8,000 or 14,000 because they do look very similar. One they call tan, one they call cream. I can let you guys guess which one is which. Because to me, when I'm using them, they both look very much similar. And if I've got the idea that one is tan and one is cream, it kind of helps me pick which one is which. But just to be safe, I'm always putting them back in their bags because I know I'll get it mixed up one day. And I don't really want to go from the 14 to the 8. And I don't think all these steps are necessary either. After the 3000, you can probably skip the 8000. I don't see many people use it on the wheels or in the carving points. They do use the 14,000 a lot, and then the 50,000 just for those stones where they don't use a metal oxide. But yeah, just going through all of these, and then after that, I'll chuck it in a dome, but then we'll get to the drying. Alright, and here we are at the end of it all. It looks a bit like a human skull from this side on view, and there is some colour, but not a lot, so I'm not overly sad about the next stage. So the next stage, which will be in a video in a few months, because I think the drying process that I'm going to employ on this one is going to be ultra slow, just because the probability of this working is incredibly slim, talking to everyone that's played around with it before. This water opal is called water opal for a reason, and it is always best to just finish it up and then leave it in a jar like this. It looks cool, I guess. Not overly useful if you want to set it into a piece of jewelry or something. Like these pieces, it basically restricts it to being a specimen piece if you can't really get it out of the water, dry it, shape it up how you want, and then set it in some sort of jewelry. If you are just happy with specimen pieces, that's all well and good, but you can't expect to ask a hell of a lot of value for them in that case. So we are going to try to take it that one step further and sacrifice this one, see how it goes. If it's really successful, good. If it's not successful, well, it could just be that it doesn't work for all opal. So I'm definitely not saying if I can't dry this one, it can never be dried. I know that people have successfully dried some of these pieces before, but when they've tried hundreds of them, you might only get 1 or 2 that works. So definitely not overly confident, but I am going to try it out myself. And this is the perfect piece because it doesn't have that much color. So I'm just going to get it out of the dome, and yeah, it'll all be in the next video, but get it out of the dome, chuck it in a sealed bag, and we'll go through the stages of drying. One other thing that I do want to mention is this Ethiopian opal. If you look at the sintered diamond burr that I've used, it's actually conditioned the burr almost as well as what I would do with an aluminium oxide stick. This burr is absolutely perfect now. So a very soft stone, and it has cleaned up the burrs a charm. Because if I compare it to one that I've noticed has been cutting a bit poorly lately, this one, even when cutting boulder, which is what I was cutting last, it definitely needs to be redressed. So I'm going to get the aluminium oxide stick onto it. But you can see here, the Ethiopian opal has really almost polished this burr. So it's beautiful. It's really good. It's done a very good job. Now, we don't buy Ethiopian opal just to dress our sintered diamond burrs, but it's just a funny little side note that I took while carving this one. This will be cutting my Aussie opal much better now, so I'm looking forward to that. This one I might just need to find a nice chunk of Ethiopian opal that's got no color at all and just grind it away, because it's it's in serious need of help. There's just not a lot of exposed diamond, and the surface is, yeah, very, very, very dull. But yeah, that was just a funny little side note that I thought I would mention, just because I've never noticed it until now. But time to move on, and I've got a whole heap of other Aussie opals to cut. I don't do a lot of Ethiopian, so it's been good to mix it up a little bit. But back to the other stuff. I've got heaps of stones to cut, and this one is going to be a future science project. So stay tuned if you're interested to see how this works out, or not. Most likely or not, but we'll see. Never say never. And I'll catch you in the next one.